Jake Foster wiped the thick grease from his calloused hands, the rough rag doing little to clean the oil that had worked its way into every crack and line of his palms. It was just another Tuesday afternoon in the lower decks of Tertius 9, a forgotten refueling station that floated in the dead space between major trade routes. The kind of place where broken ships came to die and broken people came to hide. He'd been elbow-deep in a busted coolant system when the emergency klaxons started screaming. The sound cut through the usual hum of machinery like a knife. Jake looked up from his cluttered workbench, tools scattered everywhere, half-empty coffee mugs competing for space with circuit boards and power cells. Through the grimy viewport of his shop, he could see people starting to run. Then the impact hit. The entire station shuddered. Tools flew off tables. Coffee mugs shattered on the floor. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. Jake grabbed the edge of his workbench to steady himself as a low metallic groan echoed through the walls. That wasn't good. That was the sound of the station's hull taking serious damage. He moved to the viewport and pressed his face against the scratched glass. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A ship was dying on the main docking platform. But this wasn't just any ship. Even half-destroyed and bleeding atmosphere, Jake recognized the design. Those curved lines, the bioorganic hull plating, the way the metal seemed to flow like frozen water. Drackery. A real honest-to-God Drackery warship. Smoke poured from a dozen hull breaches. Entire sections of the ship looked melted, like something had carved through the armor with raw heat. The landing struts had buckled on impact, leaving the massive vessel tilted at a dangerous angle. Small fires flickered along the hull, quickly dying in the vacuum of space before the automatic foam systems kicked in. Jake had never seen a Drackery ship up close before. Nobody had, not for years. The Drackery were legends now, stories told in bars and trading posts. They'd once ruled half the known galaxy, these dragon-like beings who could merge their bodies with their ships, becoming one with the machines they piloted. They'd been unstoppable, unbeatable, untouchable. But that was before the dimming. Nobody knew exactly what the dimming was. Some kind of disease, people said. Some kind of curse. Whatever it was, it had been killing the Drackery for decades now. Their numbers dropping year by year. Their empire crumbling world by world. The proud dragon warriors were going extinct, and the galaxy was watching it happen. Station security was already on the scene, their voices crackling over the emergency channels. Evacuate the sector. Clear the area. The ship was unstable. It could explode at any moment. Standard procedure for a vessel this damaged was immediate spacing. Push it off the platform and let it drift into the void. Jake watched the crowd through his viewport. People were running away from the docking platform, shoving and pushing in their panic to get to safety. Station workers, traders, families with children. Everyone had the same idea. Get away. Get far away. Jake grabbed his tool belt. While everyone else ran away from the danger, he walked straight toward it. He'd been fixing impossible things his whole life. That's what humans did, wasn't it? Everyone else in the galaxy had their fancy technology, their perfect systems, their ancient knowledge. Humans just had stubbornness and duct tape. And sometimes that was enough. The docking platform was chaos. Emergency lights strobed red. Alarms wailed. The air tasted like burnt metal and leaked coolant. Jake climbed over debris and squeezed through a gap in the Drackery ship's hull. The metal was still hot to the touch, even through his gloves. Inside, the ship was dying. The biomechanical systems that kept it alive were failing one by one. Lights flickered weakly along organic cables that pulsed like dying veins. The air was thin, barely breathable. Jake pulled a respirator from his belt and kept moving deeper. He found her in what must have been the command center, though it looked nothing like any cockpit he'd ever seen. She was magnificent and terrible all at once. Sovereign Kira, her nameplate read in symbols he somehow understood. She hung suspended in a web of cables and tubes, her body seamlessly merged with the ship's systems. Where dragon ended and machine began was impossible to tell. Her scales were metal. Her claws were data ports. She was the ship and the ship was her. And she was dying. Her chest barely moved. The biomechanical implants covering her body flickered with failing power. She was unconscious, maybe worse. Jake's communicator crackled. Station authorities were ordering him out. The ship was tagged for disposal. Too dangerous to salvage. Too expensive to repair. Get out now, they said. That's an order, they said. Jake turned off his communicator. He looked at the dying dragon, at the failing systems, at the impossible mess of technology that was decades beyond anything humanity had ever built. Any sane person would walk away. Any smart person would listen to the authorities. But Jake had never been particularly sane or smart. He'd just been good at fixing things everyone else said were broken beyond repair. He pulled out his tools and got to work. Kira's eyes snapped open, and the first thing she saw was something that shouldn't exist. A human. Elbow deep in her ship's neural core. Her neural core. The sacred heart of her vessel, the place where her consciousness merged with the machine, where dragon and metal became one entity. Impossible. Dracry technology was ancient, refined over thousands of years. It was beyond the comprehension of younger species, especially humans. These upstart newcomers who'd barely left their home system a few centuries ago. Yet here one was, his hands moving through her ship's biomechanical systems like he understood them. Like he'd built them himself. "What are you doing?" Kira's voice came out weak, barely a rasp. She tried to move but couldn't. Her body was still locked into the ship's systems and everything hurt. "Saving your life," Jake said, not even looking up from his work. His hands moved quickly, disconnecting a failing power relay and replacing it with something that looked absolutely ridiculous. Was that a human medical scanner jury-rigged into her navigation system? "Your ship's dying. You're dying. And I'm guessing your people's traditional repair methods aren't working anymore, are they?" Kira wanted to argue but she couldn't. He was right. The dimming had corrupted her systems beyond what any Dracry technician could repair. Their methods required precision, purity, perfection. Her ship was none of those things anymore. "This is sacrilege," she whispered. "Yeah, probably," Jake agreed cheerfully. He pulled out what looked like a medical tube meant for human patients and started connecting it to her ship's coolant system. "But you know what? Sacrilege keeps you breathing. I'll take that trade." Over the next several hours, Kira watched in horror and fascination as Jake worked. He used parts that had no business being in a Dracry ship. Human medical equipment. Salvaged power cells from cargo haulers. Circuit boards that were held together with actual metal wire instead of elegant neural pathways. He even used what humans called duct tape to seal a leaking fluid line. It was ugly. It was crude. It was completely against every principle of Dracry engineering. It was working. "How do you know what to do?" Kira asked as Jake paused to wipe sweat from his forehead. "You shouldn't be able to read my ship's systems." Jake shrugged. "I can't, not really. But here's the thing about human engineering. We don't need to understand everything perfectly. We just need to understand what something does and find another way to make it do that thing." He gestured at a pulsing biomechanical line. "This carries energy to your propulsion system, right? Okay, so when it fails, I don't need to fix it the way your people would. I just need to get energy flowing again. Doesn't matter if it's pretty." "Dracry technology demands elegance," Kira said softly. "Yeah, and where did that get you?" Jake's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "Look, I'm not saying your way is wrong. Your ships are beautiful. They're works of art. But art doesn't help much when you're bleeding out in a crashed vessel. Sometimes you need something that just works, even if it's held together with spare parts and hope." As the hours turned into days, something unexpected happened. They talked. Actually talked, not just about repairs but about everything. Kira told him about the Dracry Empire in its glory days. About worlds that bent knee to dragon warriors, about fleets that could crack planets. But then she told him about the fall. About how the dimming appeared 50 years ago, slowly corrupting their biomechanical technology. About how their best scientists couldn't stop it because they were trapped by their own traditions. Every solution had to be perfect, elegant, proper. And while they debated the right way to save themselves, more Dracry died. "We couldn't adapt," Kira admitted, her voice heavy with old pain. "Our pursuit of perfection became our cage. We forgot how to improvise, how to make do, how to survive when things weren't ideal." Jake nodded, his hands never stopping their work. "Humans are pretty good at surviving when things aren't ideal. Probably because things are never ideal for us. We've always been the underdogs, you know? We don't have the strongest bodies or the fastest ships or the most advanced technology. So we learn to make do. We learn to fix broken things, to adapt, to try crazy ideas that might not work but just might save the day." He told her about Earth's history. About how humans had clawed their way up from nothing, surviving ice ages and wars and disasters that should have wiped them out. About how they'd reached space with rockets that were basically controlled explosions, held together with engineering that made other species laugh. Until those crude ships started working better than anyone expected. "We're really good at making impossible things possible," Jake said. "It's kind of our thing." On the third day, Kira's ship hummed with renewed life. The systems were stable. Not perfect, not elegant, but alive and functional. She could feel the difference in her own body as the neural connection strengthened. She was healing. Jake was in the data core trying to restore her corrupted memory banks, when he suddenly went very still. "Kira," he said quietly. "You need to see this." She pulled herself over to where he was working, her body still weak but mobile. Jake had managed to recover some of the corrupted data streams, the ones that had been eaten away by the dimming. "Look at this pattern," he said, pointing at a screen. "This isn't random corruption. This is deliberate. Structured. Someone wrote this." Kira stared at the data, her blood running cold. She'd been a warrior for 2 centuries. She knew a weapon when she saw one. The dimming wasn't a disease. It wasn't some mysterious curse or natural plague. It was engineered. Someone, somewhere, had deliberately created a weapon designed to destroy Drakri biomechanical technology. To genocide an entire species slowly, making it look like natural decline. "Can you trace it?" Kira asked, her voice hard. Jake's fingers flew across the interface. Yeah, I think I can. The source code is old, but whoever made this left breadcrumbs. Probably never expected anyone to find them because they figured all the Drakri would be dead before anyone looked this deep. He pulled up a star chart. A location marker appeared, blinking red in a distant sector. "The trail's still warm," Jake said. Kira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope, not quite. Something colder, sharper. Purpose. "Then we follow it," she said. The transmission from the Drakri Council came through 3 days after Jake got Kira's ship operational. The message was formal, cold, and absolutely clear. Sovereign Kira was ordered to return to the homeworld immediately for proper treatment. Her ship would be dismantled and studied. The human would be compensated for his services and sent on his way. Kira stared at the message for a long moment, then did something no Drakri had done in living memory. She hit delete and turned off the receiver. "You know they're going to come after you for that, right?" Jake said from where he was reinforcing the starboard power coupling with what looked like parts from a coffee maker. "Let them come," Kira replied, her eyes fixed on the star chart showing the location of the weapon source code. "I've been following orders for 200 years. Look where it got my people. Maybe it's time we tried something different." Jake grinned. "Now you're thinking like a human." They left Tertius 9 that night, slipping away while station security was dealing with a convenient malfunction in the docking bay doors. Jake never said anything, but Kira suspected he'd had something to do with that malfunction. Humans were sneaky like that. By the next morning they were officially fugitives. The council issued warrants for Kira's arrest and branded her a traitor to her people. Drakri loyalists who still believed in the old ways put bounties on her head. 3 different hunter crews picked up their trail before they'd even left council space. The first hunter ship caught up with them near the Belmont cluster. It was a sleek Drakri interceptor, faster and newer than Kira's patched-up warship. The hunter demanded their surrender, confident in his superior vessel. He wasn't expecting what Kira had become. Jake's modifications had done more than just save her life. They changed her. Where pure Drakri technology was rigid and perfect, the hybrid systems Jake had built were adaptable. Unpredictable. When the hunter expected her to move like a traditional Drakri ship, she moved like something else entirely. Something that combined dragon grace with human improvisation. The fight lasted 90 seconds. The hunter's ship limped away with a disabled weapons array and a very confused pilot. "You fight different now," Jake observed, checking the systems after the encounter. "More chaotic." "Is that bad?" Kira asked. "Are you kidding? It's perfect. You're keeping them off balance. They're expecting a Drakri warrior, but you're something new. Something they don't have a playbook for." They followed the trail to the first abandoned laboratory on a dead world called Epsilon 7. The facility had been hidden underground for decades, maybe centuries. The equipment was old but still functional, powered by backup generators that had outlasted their creators. Jake and Kira moved through empty corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They found research notes, experiment logs, fragments of the original project. The Architect Collective. That's what they called themselves. A coalition of ancient species who'd feared Drakri dominance. They'd created the dimming as insurance, a fail-safe weapon to activate if the dragons ever became too powerful. "They were afraid of us," Kira said softly, reading the files. "Can you blame them?" Jake replied. "Your people conquered half the galaxy. These species probably figured it was either create a weapon or wait to be enslaved." "We never enslaved anyone," Kira protested. Jake gave her a look. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, bend the knee or get conquered, sounds a lot like slavery with extra steps." Kira didn't have an answer for that. The second laboratory was on a frozen moon. The third on an abandoned space station. Each location revealed more pieces of the puzzle. The dimming had been specifically engineered to target Drakari biomechanical systems. It was supposed to lie dormant for generations, then activate slowly, making it look like natural decline. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. And it had almost worked. But it was the fourth world that changed everything. The laboratory there was different. Newer. Still active. And what they found in its core research facility made Jake's blood run cold. The dimming had mutated. The weapon that was supposed to target only Drakari technology had evolved beyond its original programming. Jake watched the data streams with growing horror, seeing the infection patterns spread across the screens. "It's adapting," he said, his voice tight. "Learning." The original virus was designed to attack one specific type of biomechanical integration. But this version has learned to recognize other patterns. Other species. Kira leaned closer. How many other species? Jake pulled up the projection models and his stomach dropped. All of them. Every species in the galaxy that uses biomechanical technology. The virus has mutated into something that can infect anyone. It's just moving slower with non-Drakari because it has to learn their systems first. How long do we have? Jake ran the numbers. At current mutation rates? Maybe 20 years before it starts hitting other species. 50 years before it's everywhere. The architects created a weapon they thought they could control. They were wrong. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the architect collective probably thought their problem was solving itself. The Drakari were dying and soon the weapon would die with them. They had no idea it was getting ready to kill everyone else too. Jake looked at the data streams, at the spreading infection patterns, at the timeline counting down to galactic catastrophe. He thought about every biomechanical species out there, going about their lives, completely unaware of what was coming. Then he thought about the hybrid systems keeping Kira alive. Human technology that the virus couldn't recognize, couldn't touch. "We don't just cure this," Jake said, his voice hard with determination. "We stop it. Permanently. We burn this thing out of existence before it takes down the entire galaxy." Kira's eyes blazed with something she hadn't felt in decades. Not just anger or vengeance but actual hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe, just maybe, her people could survive. That all people could survive. "Then we hunt down whoever created this," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 2 centuries of warrior training. "And we make them fix what they broke." Jake checked his tool belt and grabbed his data pad. "Sounds like a plan. Let's go save the galaxy." Outside, their hybrid ship waited, a symbol of what could be achieved when different species work together instead of fearing each other. They had a weapon to stop, creators to find, and a galaxy to save. And they were just getting started. New Austin was the kind of place that didn't exist on official star charts. A human frontier colony perched on a rocky moon, built by people who decided the core worlds had too many rules and not enough freedom. When Kira's damaged ship limped into their space, half the colony's defense grid lighting up with warnings, they didn't shoot first and ask questions later like most places would. Instead, a gruff voice came over the comm. "You running from something or toward something?" "Both," Jake answered honestly. There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Ain't that always the way? Dock at Bay 7. We'll figure it out from there." The colony administrator, a weathered woman named Rita who looked like she'd seen 3 lifetimes worth of trouble, met them at the landing pad. She took one look at Kira's hybrid ship, patched together with human and Drakari tech, and whistled low. "That's either the dumbest thing I've ever seen or the smartest," Rita said. "Council's got bounty hunters crawling all over the nearby systems looking for you too." "We know," Kira said. Rita nodded. "Well, those hunters can go to hell. New Austin doesn't bow to the Council, Drakari or otherwise. You need help, you got it. That's how we do things out here." They set up in an abandoned warehouse on the colony's edge. Jake had been quiet during the flight to New Austin, his mind clearly working through something. Now, as he spread out his tools and equipment, Kira could see that look in his eyes. The same look he'd had when he first decided to save her on Tertius 9. "I've got an idea," Jake said. "It's crazy. Probably dangerous. Definitely going to hurt. But I think it might be the answer to everything." He pulled up the data they'd collected from the laboratories. "Look at this. The dimming targets Drakari biotechnology specifically. It recognizes the patterns, the way your systems integrate organic and mechanical components. It knows what to look for." "Yes, we've established that," Kira said. "But it doesn't recognize human cybernetics." Jake's words came faster now, excited. "Human tech is messy. Redundant. We build systems that can fail and keep working. We use completely different integration methods. The virus looks at human implants and doesn't see them as targets because they're too different from what it was programmed to attack. Kira felt her pulse quicken. You want to make me more human. Not just you. Your entire ship. We integrate human cybernetics into your core systems. Create a hybrid that's part Dracary, part human. The virus won't recognize you anymore. It'll look at you and see something it wasn't designed to infect. Can that even work? Jake ran his hand through his hair. Honestly? I have no idea. The technologies are fundamentally incompatible. Your systems are elegant, integrated, designed to work as one perfect unit. Human systems are chaotic, modular, designed to be replaced when they break. Forcing them together is like trying to mix oil and water. But you think you can do it? I think I have to try. Because if this works, it's not just a cure for you. It's a cure for every Dracary still alive. It's a way to stop the dimming permanently. Kira looked at her hands, at the biomechanical implants that had defined her existence for 2 centuries. She thought about her people, scattered across dying worlds, clinging to traditions that were killing them. She thought about the weapons spreading through the galaxy, evolving, adapting, preparing to consume other species. It'll hurt, won't it? She asked quietly. Jake met her eyes. Yeah, it'll hurt a lot. I'll be ripping out parts of your core systems and replacing them with human tech. Your body will fight it. The integration process is going to feel like being torn apart and put back together wrong. Kira stood up straighter, her warrior training taking over. Everything hurts now. Every day I wake up, I feel the dimming eating away at me. At least this hurt has a purpose. Do it. The procedure took 16 hours. Jake had to work in stages, carefully removing corrupted Dracary systems and replacing them with human cybernetic implants. It wasn't surgery in the traditional sense. It was more like rebuilding an engine while it was still running. Kira had to stay conscious through most of it, her neural pathways being rewritten in real time. She didn't scream. Dracary warriors didn't scream. But Jake saw her claws dig grooves into the metal table, saw the way her body shook as incompatible technologies fought for dominance inside her. Rita and several colonists helped, following Jake's increasingly frantic instructions. They jury-rigged power supplies, created custom interface cables, and basically invented new technology on the fly. It was the most human thing imaginable, making up solutions as they went along. Hour 12, Kira's heart stopped. Jake had to manually restart it with a human defibrillator hooked directly into her neural core. Hour 14, her ship's system started rejecting the changes, trying to purge the human technology as foreign contamination. Jake had to convince the ship's AI that the modifications were necessary, talking to it like he would a scared animal. Hour 16, something clicked. The incompatible systems suddenly found a way to work together. Dracary precision guided by human adaptability. Elegant design supported by crude but effective redundancies. It shouldn't have worked. It worked beautifully. When Kira finally stood up, she was different. She could feel it immediately. The dimming's constant presence, that slow corruption eating away at her systems, was gone. The virus looked at her hybrid systems and found nothing it recognized as a target. Her ship transformed with her. The biomechanical vessel integrated human technology throughout its core, becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A true hybrid of 2 species' engineering philosophies. News of their success spread faster than they'd anticipated. Word reached the architect collective within days. And they panicked. The Dracary were supposed to die quietly, their extinction looking like natural decline. Instead, they were adapting, evolving, becoming something new. The collective had spent resources and decades creating the dimming. They couldn't let it fail. They sent the silencer. It arrived 3 weeks later, dropping out of hyperspace above New Austin like a nightmare made real. The ship was enormous, bigger than the entire colony. It was ancient, built during the last Great War, designed for one purpose: sterilizing worlds that refused to submit. The silencer was a living warship, its biomechanical systems even more advanced than Kira's. It had weapons that could crack continents, shields that had never been breached, and it had been sent to ensure Kira and her hybrid technology never spread. The battle started at dawn and lasted 6 hours. Jake worked from inside Kira's ship, his hands flying across controls, keeping systems running through increasingly impossible damage. Human redundancy systems kicked in when Dracary components failed. Crude emergency repairs held together elegant technology. It was chaos, but it was effective chaos. Kira fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. She combined Dracary warrior precision with human unpredictability. When the silencer expected elegant maneuvers, she hit it with chaotic aggression. When it adapted to her chaos, she shifted to calculated strikes. The entire colony watched. 3 nearby systems watched. Anyone monitoring long-range sensors watched. And when Kira's final shot pierced the silencer's core, when that ancient warship broke apart in a cascade of explosions, they all saw it. A hybrid ship, built from 2 species technology, had destroyed something that was supposed to be unstoppable. Jake collapsed into his chair, exhausted as debris rained down around them. Did we just do that? Kira's laugh was tired but genuine. We just did that. The galaxy would never be the same. The Architect Collective's leadership came out of hiding 3 days after the silencer fell. They broadcast across every major communication channel in the galaxy, their message clear and desperate. The hybrid technology had to be destroyed. Kira had to be stopped. Allowing the Dracari to survive, to evolve, threatened the careful balance they'd maintained for millennia. They talked about stability, about order, about how the galaxy needed their guidance to prevent chaos. Nobody was buying it anymore. A trade captain from the Belmont cluster responded first. You mean the balance where you got to decide who lives and dies? Yeah, we're done with that. Then a mining colony. Then an entire planetary government. Within hours, the collective's broadcast was drowning in responses from species across 3 sectors, all saying the same thing. The old tyrants had run out of time. Jake watched the responses flood in from the communication hub on New Austin. Rita stood beside him, arms crossed, a satisfied smile on her weathered face. Looks like you two started something, she said. We just wanted to stop a weapon, Jake replied. Kid, you did more than that. You showed everyone that the rules aren't set in stone. That old powers can fall. That's dangerous knowledge. Rita's smile widened. The good kind of dangerous. Kira stood at the viewport, looking out at her hybrid ship. It was time. Time to give her people the same choice she'd made. She activated every Dracari communication network simultaneously. Traditional council channels, military frequencies, civilian broadcasts, even the encrypted lines used by the most isolated colonies. For the first time in centuries, every living Dracari heard the same message at the same moment. Kira didn't sugarcoat it. She told them everything. About the dimming being a weapon, not a disease. About the Architect Collective's plan to slowly exterminate them. About the hybrid technology that could save them. And then she gave them the choice. We can cling to our ancient purity and die with dignity, she said, her voice steady and strong. Or we can embrace change and survive. I'm not your sovereign anymore. I'm not your commander. I'm just someone who wants to live, who wants our people to have a future. The hybrid cure is here. The technology is available. What you do with it is up to you. The response split Dracari society right down the middle. The traditionalists were furious. They called Kira a traitor to everything the Dracari represented. Council members gave speeches about the sanctity of pure Dracari technology, about how mixing with human systems was an abomination. Some called for her execution. Others simply declared her dead to them, erasing her from their records as if she'd never existed. But the progressives saw hope for the first time in decades. Young Dracari, ones who'd grown up watching their parents and grandparents slowly die from the dimming, didn't care about purity. They cared about living. Within a week, the first ships started arriving at New Austin, their pilots desperate to learn about the hybrid technology. Jake and Kira stayed on the colony for 2 months, teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Jake showed Dracari engineers how to think like humans, how to improvise, how to make systems work even when they shouldn't. It was chaos. Arguments erupted daily about proper technique. Traditional Dracari engineers clashed with human mechanics over methodology. But slowly, impossibly, it worked. The first successful hybrid conversions started spreading across the Dracari network. Lives were saved. The dimming's advance stopped. When Jake finally decided to head back to Tertius 9, Kira came with him. Her place wasn't with the Council anymore, wasn't with the homeworld. It was here with the human who'd refused to let her die. Tertius 9 welcomed them back like heroes. The little repair shop in the lower decks had become legendary. People from all over the sector wanted to meet the human mechanic who'd saved a sovereign and changed galactic history. Jake hated the attention, but he couldn't turn away the young Dracari who started showing up at his door. The first was a pilot named Thorn, barely 70 years old by Dracari standards, practically a kid. His ship was dying from the dimming, and traditional engineers had told him to scrap it. He'd flown 3 weeks to reach Tertius 9. Teach me, Thorn said simply. I want to learn to fix things the human way. Soon there were others. Young Dracari who saw the future wasn't in the old ways. They wanted to blend their heritage with new possibilities. Jake's little shop became a school, a place where two species knowledge combined. Jake stood in his workshop one quiet morning, watching Thorn struggle with a plasma coupling. The young Drackery was trying to do it the traditional way, precisely and perfectly. It wasn't working. "Stop thinking so much," Jake called out. "Just feel what the system needs. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work." Thorn looked doubtful but tried again, this time with more intuition and less rigid precision. The coupling clicked into place. "I did it." Thorn's excitement was obvious. Kira stood beside Jake, her hybrid ship visible through the viewport, now serving as the station's protector. Other ships came and went, but hers remained, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. "Think they'll make it?" Kira asked, watching the young Drackery celebrate his small victory. Jake smiled, that same stubborn smile he'd worn when he first decided to save a dying dragon. "They're Drackery with human stubbornness. They'll be unstoppable." The repair shop buzzed with activity. Human mechanics worked alongside Drackery engineers. Species that had never cooperated before were sharing techniques, arguing about methodology and creating something entirely new in the process. Humanity had found its place in the cosmic order. Not as conquerors trying to dominate. Not as servants bowing to greater powers. But as the galaxy's fixers, the ones who looked at broken things and saw potential, who refused to accept that anything was truly beyond repair. The Drackery Empire wasn't dead. It was transforming, finding new life by letting go of old rigidity. And across the stars, other species watched and learned. If Drackery could change, could adapt, could survive by embracing new ideas, maybe they could too. The dragon had refused to die. The mechanic had refused to let her. Together, they'd proven that the future belonged to those willing to adapt, to improvise, to try impossible things. And in workshops, repair bays, and engineering stations across 3 sectors, 1,000 other impossible partnerships were just beginning. The galaxy was changing, one fixed ship at a time. Sometimes all it takes is one stubborn human with a toolbox and the crazy idea that nothing is ever truly broken. Just waiting for the right person to fix it.